A crash will undoubtedly occur in the near future, and from the ashes will emerge a new monetary system. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we are going to discuss so much, and I just want to get to this article first out of CNBC, talking about the former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan. This is a very intelligent individual, and obviously he had been persuaded by the dark side, shall we say, to join the Federal Reserve. His early work was definitely on point. He believed in sound money. And just get to this right here. The massive QE bond buying programs in the US have not led to an overvalued stock market, though there may be overheated pockets. That's what he said. So let's read his actual quote and get a feel for this. "We can't argue that we're extremely overvalued in the marketplace." That's a quote. Then he continues on. "Even though you are talking about individual bubbles." So, he goes on to say other things, but he does admit that they are extremely overvalued, but says, no, you're not in a bubble yet. Now, that could be the case because he does believe, and he has said this publicly, that there is no reason why the Federal Reserve cannot pay any debt simply because they can pay money or print money to do so. And I'm paraphrasing him, but that is what he said. And essentially, they've got a long way to go. They're only in the trillions, and I say only, in the trillions of dollars being printed. They have quadrillions to go into, and assuredly, they will head in that direction. So we're going to move on to China now. Obviously, China being very big news at any given time. Everyone's always watching them, hoping that they will continue to grow at an accelerated pace to keep the world turning. China's long-awaited international payment system to process cross-border yuan transactions is ready and may be launched as early as September-October, 3 sources with direct knowledge told Reuters. This is huge news because there is consistently this talk about the fact that China is simply not as big as the US, they can't compete, so on and so forth. So look at this. The launch of the China International Payment System, CIPS, will remove one of the biggest hurdles to internationalizing the yuan and greatly increase the global usage of the Chinese currency by cutting transaction costs and processing times. Any of the hurdles, any of the obstacles that are in the way of China, and they are in fact removed, you're going to have an advantage that goes in favor of China. They're definitely progressing. It's going to take a long time in order to do this. However, they are heading in that direction. It's very clear that they want to dominate the global economy. It will also put the yuan on a more even footing with other major global currencies like the US dollar. And that's what they fear. Ultimately, the US knows that at some point it's not going to be the major global reserve anymore. It's going to be giving up on this. Well, let's move on to a connected article right here out of RT. The Chinese currency is the 5th most used currency in international payments, according to the SWIFT network responsible for international financial transactions. Breaking into the top 5 is a symbolic balance dollar-denominated payments. Can you believe it? The 5th most used currency, and it actually, the yuan or renminbi surpassed the Canadian and Australian dollars. That's incredible to note that these major developed nations are being surpassed by China in many ways. In 2014, yuan payments doubled to 102% and increased by 20% in December alone. So this right here goes to show you how serious this is right now. Things are changing very, very rapidly. It is a great testimony to the internationalization of the renminbi and confirms its transition from an emerging to a business-as-usual payment currency. Many different countries are in fact using the yuan, using the renminbi as a financial means of financial transaction in between China. Very, very important to look at this, especially when you see currencies like the euro weakening. You could see the yuan or the Chinese currency coming in to fill that void. So we'll have to see how this all plays out. Now, this article out of the RT talking about China and Russia effectively switched to domestic currencies in trading using financial tools as swaps and forwards as they seek to reduce their influence of the US dollar and foreign exchange risks. They're doing this is in fact very smart on their part, and they are simply going ahead with this, consistently signing new agreements in between each other. Now, I will just enter this point right here. I always have to hear individuals talking about the fact that China and Russia are small in comparison to the amount of US dollars. That cannot be denied. That is absolute. That is true. However, we're not just seeing China and Russia being the only two. In fact, look at this. From now on, yuan swaps are available for 11 currencies on the foreign exchange market. Things are changing. You see the currency swaps that are available, and I believe it was around 30 of them now, 30 nations choosing to do business with China in their own currencies. And that goes to show you how powerful this can be. Talking about the agreement that signed up to 150 billion, that's 25 billion US. Still, again, very small in comparison to the total value of the US dollar and how it's able to move the markets, but it is growing consistently year over year. We are seeing how Russia, for example, is selling off of their US debt. There's different reasons why they're doing this. It doesn't matter. The fact that they are in fact selling off. China consistently speaking the rhetoric in the markets, talking about how they want to do away with the US dollar right here. This is a very important indicator. China won't stop yuan globalization or capital account opening because of the volatility in the emerging market currencies. Also, something very interesting to note. I will look at this quote here from my book. China and Russia have decided to renounce the US dollar and resort to using their own currencies. This equates to a huge shift in the flow of credit to the US moving to the developing world. Something that I've consistently brought up over and over. Again, I won't get into any more from the book today. I just want to move on very quickly. So much to discuss. This is it. The UK is now the topic, so I'll move on to that. The UK Treasury is not taking the steps required to prepare Britons for another financial meltdown, cross-party committee of MPs warned on Monday. So here we are several years after the financial crisis, and they're still talking about not being ready, not being prepared. Why? Simply because they didn't do anything to prepare themselves. They're talking about the stress tests that they are about to fail. This is going on for the UK and also the US as well. But let me read into this. The report found there is a surprising and urgent gap in the British Treasury's readiness for disaster. The committee said it has not come across sufficient evidence to suggest that the government officials have learned the most important lessons of the 2007-2008 crash. And that is not me saying that. That is the government officials in the UK. Of course, when you increase the amount of debt, when you increase the amount of derivatives, everything bad is increasing, and all of the positive signs have in fact been declining and decreasing every single year. So this is pretty obvious. The government officials didn't need to say that. Anybody who's just half awake can see this happening. So there are definite future risks and challenges facing the UK. I completely agree with that. And look at this. Former Bank of England Governor Mervyn King has warned that the British banks are too weak to weather another financial crisis. The government doesn't have the heart, got to the heart of what went wrong in 2008. Obviously, I completely agree with this as well. Interest rates are extremely low. 0.5%. Look at Canada, I believe it's 0.75%. Look at the US, nearly in the same situation. We have Australia recently decreasing their interest rates. Nations around the world are in fact going into negative territory in particular assets. I don't think we are at the point where we can be confident that the banking system would be entirely safe. The idea that we can go on indefinitely with very low interest rates doesn't make much sense. And you don't need the former Bank of England governor to suggest this. Obviously, if you bring the interest rates down to this low for this long, you're going to have dislocations and it's going to cause a big problem. And we are seeing that now. The cracks are appearing. It's pretty obvious. But of course, now, years after the fact, we are having people in the government and former government officials coming in and saying this. Finally, we are hearing some of the truth. Now we're going to move on to the Wall Street Journal and the U.S. Big banks struggle to pass the Fed's stress tests. There is very rarely that they have a legitimate stress test, but even when they do these, which are always in favor of the banks themselves, they fail them. This happened in Europe just recently, and it's going to happen again. Four of the biggest names on Wall Street struggled to pass the Fed's 2015 stress test, and the U.S. units of two foreign banks fell short, underscoring the constraints and the annual exercise imposed at the largest banks more than 6 years after the 2008 crisis. When you look at the derivative exposure that is going on, not just in the U.S., but all of these major banks that you keep hearing about in the news, you have to realize the fact that it is never possible to be bailed out. One bank, such as the Deutsche Bank or even JP Morgan, have more derivatives than the entire GDP of the world, and this is the GDP that includes illegal activity. We all know how the fraudulent activity, particularly in Italy and Spain and other countries in Europe, are using illegal activity to actually support their GDP. This is public information. So, of course, you're going to have these type of problems. They're going to continue. The Federal Reserve stress test means nothing really, because the Federal Reserve itself is bankrupt, it's fraudulent, and then you have the rating agencies around here that we're supposed to be trusting. However, they rated the most garbage assets possible at AAA. So how in the world can you trust them? The fact is that you absolutely cannot. And this is just one more thing I wanted to leave with. This is out of the Washington Times. Obamacare exchange customers could see a significant spike in their premiums over the next few years as insurers face pressures from both the government and the marketplace, according to the CBO. Now, when they brought in Obamacare, it was said that, of course, you'd be able to keep your doctor. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. That's a quote. And then we found out that he lied afterwards. He also said it is specifically not a tax. But then we found out later from various individuals that, in fact, it was not just a tax. It imposes 21 new taxes in different ways. So, once again, another lie. And then they said it would not increase the amount that you pay for your healthcare. And here they are. You could see a significant spike. To move on, the CBO said the exchanges and the other new medical coverage under the Obamacare will cost the government slightly more than $500 billion over the next 5 years, which is about $200 billion less than the $700 billion projected when the law was enacted in 2010. They could say anything they want. The fact remains that they said it would not increase the amount that people pay, but in fact, many people have experienced a doubling of the amount that they were paying. Now, this is incredible, and this is obviously done to siphon money out of the individual citizens' hands and put it into the elite class, into the big pharma, into the big bankers' hands, and all of the technocratic elite and all of these globalists that sit above the government. Warren Buffett gets the bailouts at the same time that he says tax the quote-unquote wealthy, which is simply individuals making more money than the average citizen, and they are the ones oftentimes supporting the economy. So of course, this is what they try to do. They try to pull away the middle class, bring them down into the lower classes, and then they can have their elitists sitting at the top. This is what's happening. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. I would ask you to be a subscriber on here on the YouTube channel. We are over 17,000 subscribers on here. I receive emails every single day. My inbox is consistently flooded, but I'm always replying back. The best place to get me is at the Insider, so you definitely want to get me on there. My other email, david@themoneygps.com, is something that I reply to after emptying out the inbox for the insiders, just to let you know. And once again, I'll just mention right here, if you want to get me on a consultation, please do not message me in the YouTube comments. It's very hard for me to get back to these comments. I try to as much as possible, but the best place is definitely to email me if you need a consultation. And of course, don't forget to become an insider, because it's where I give out all my best intel for free that is available at themoneygps.com. You just scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with good, short, concise info.